is Conspirinormal.
Welcome to Conspiranormal, everybody. It's your host, Adam. Surfiel is here as well, and we've got an interesting show for you guys tonight.
Got something a little different than usual.
Yeah. We're going to get into the world of treasure hunting.
And we've got a real-life treasure hunter.
Yeah, if you want to introduce our guest, Surfiel, this is really some stuff that you've been really passionate about lately. So I'm just kind of sit back and listen, chime in when I can. But go ahead and introduce our guest here.
We have got on the line Mr. Terry Carter, and he is connected and respected in the world of treasure hunting. Has a prolific YouTube channel, has been on a bunch of television shows and podcasts, and is also the founder of the Ancient Historical Research Foundation. Terry, welcome to Conspiranormal.
Man, thank you, and I'm honored that you'd even think about inviting me to a show like this, so thank you.
Yeah, well, you've actually been on before. You came on with Dave Altman and Micah Hanks back in September of 2020. So yeah, it's been a little while, but we're glad to have you back.
Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Terry. And I think this stuff really fits in well with a lot of the different topics that we talk about, but I think it's kind of treasure hunting's kind of a neglected part, it seems like, to most people who are interested in paranormal stuff and conspiracy theory and some of these mysteries and legends. But I know treasure legends were some of the first big mysteries that really caught my imagination when I was growing up in the American Southwest outside of Phoenix, the Lost Dutchman mine lore in particular. And I started revisiting that one again and just finding a lot of really strange things surrounding it, and really got me back into looking into treasure hunting and treasure legends as a part of all these mysteries.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of treasure hunting for the Lost Dutchman, but I looked a little bit, and I know them people out there. You know, the guy Wayne Tuttle and those that were on the show. Legends of the Superstition Mountains, and they invited me one time to go on out to their treasure hunting rendezvous, and I did, and met all them guys and had a great time. They showed me a few things, but an interesting thing that happened to me while I was there, which is in the paranormal realm, and freaked me out when I found out about it later, 4 months later, and I didn't know what to think, and completely changed my perspective on the paranormal. And I don't know if you want me to get into that. You probably don't even know about this, and I don't know if you want me to talk just about treasure hunting or paranormal, what happened to me there, or...
Yeah, go for it. You've intrigued me already.
So I was at the Dutch Hunters Rendezvous, and they gave me a ticket to go to the Lost Dutchman Museum there. And so on my way home, I stopped off there, and I through it, and as I was leaving, there was an older gentleman there with a name tag on it, and he stopped me and asked me where I was from. And at the time, I live in Utah, but at the time I work all over the country, on power plants, mines, things like that. My company I work for sends me all over the place. At the time, I was working on a power plant in Wyoming, and so I told this guy, I says, well, I live in Utah, but on the weekends, but on the weekdays, I'm living in Wyoming working on a power plant here. And I mentioned the power plant to him. He says, oh, man, I've worked on that and all these other ones. And so I thought, well, this guy, if he must be from Wyoming, if he's worked on all them power plants, and he must be out here searching for the Lost Dutchman mine is what I thought. And I thought, having a YouTube channel, I thought, well, this will be a great, if he's got a great story, I'll see if I can't get an interview out of him so I can post it on my channel, So I started asking him some questions and asking him, if he was looking for the Lost Dutchman. And he says, well, he had been looking for it, but more than anything, he was just a historian. But the climate brought him out there to the Superstition area, the Apache Junction area. And that's the reason he moved out there. And I says, well, tell me a great story. And so he starts telling me about how he'd heard that there was these charcoal ovens built by the pioneers, and on the mountain above it was a heart on the mountain. And he thought that had something to do with the Lost Dutchman mine. And he looked all over for somebody who knew where that was, and he really wasn't having any luck finding anybody. And finally he found somebody by the name of Salvador Delgadillo. Well, it just so happened that I'd met Salvador Delgadillo at this treasure hunter's rendezvous. And so he starts telling me that Salvador takes him out there. They're 10 miles out there in the desert. It's in the middle of the summer. It's hot. They see the coke ovens, the charcoal ovens, they see the heart on the mountain. And so they see those and they start coming out, and he gets a flat tire. So he changes it, and then they get another flat tire. So he's got to ride on a rim, and then he gets another flat tire. So he's riding on 2 rims, and they're back in there 10 miles, and they get stuck, and they can't get out. And he tells me this big, long story. I mean, he went into detail of everything that happened, and it was a great story, but nothing that I wanted to video. You know, I wished I would have videoed that. Anyways, he says finally nobody's coming out there. So at nighttime, they decide to hike out. So they hike out all night. Early in the morning, they hear some noise on a bluff. They hike up there. There's a road up there. They see a mom up there, an older couple. They feed them breakfast, take them back to town. They get the friend, get new tires, come out, retrieve their Jeep. You know, just a great getting stuck story, but nothing I wanted for my YouTube channel, you know. Well, I never thought any more of it, you know.
Yeah.
Told him good goodbye. Well, 4 months later, I'd heard that there was some Egyptian artifacts found near the Gila River by a couple of guys. They was out there on their motorcycles, and they was clear off the beaten path. And the one was flipping donuts there on the Gila River, and he flipped up this old ancient looking necklace that looked like Egyptian. And so I was going out there to see if I could look at this, talk with this guy and see about this Egyptian looking necklace was found, because I've been tracking down Egyptian artifacts that's been found here in the Western United States. Anyways, I stopped in to see Salvador Delgadillo as I was headed to visit this guy. And I asked Salvador, because Salvador was one of these guys who knew all the old-time treasure hunters. He worked with all of them. He knew all their stories. He was involved with all of them. You know, Salvador was one guy that knew everything that was going on at the Superstition Mountains and around it. So I asked Salvador, I said, you ever hear of any Egyptian artifacts being found around here, Salvador? And he says, well, there was this one guy. He says, he found a cave. I don't know I know the area. I don't know exactly where the cave's at, but I know the area, and it had Egyptian or Oriental artifacts in it. And he never did tell anybody where it was at, but I know the approximate area. He said, come on, let's go. So, you know, we jump in my truck and we go clear out there in the middle of nowhere. And as we're driving out there, he says, stop. There's the charcoal ovens that the pioneers built. And above that, there's a heart in the mountain. You know, and right then my mind clicked, and I remembered this old boy at the Lost Dutchman Museum telling me how, you know, Salvador took them out there and they got stranded and flat tires and that. And I said, Salvador, I met a buddy of yours. He says, you guys came out here and got stranded, got 3 flat tires and had to hike out. He says, oh yeah, that's Jim Hatton. He starts telling me the story, and it matched exactly what, you know, the older gentleman had told me. And Salvador would tell me something. I'd say, yeah, he told me that. And he also told me this. And Salvador would say, yeah, that happened and this. And we going back and forth. Anyways, I says, I met him 3 or 4 months ago. And he looks at me kind of funny, and he says, you couldn't have. I says, what do you mean I couldn't have? He says, that was Jim Hatt, man. He's been dead for 8 to 10 years. And I thought, no way, this guy was not dead. I was talking to him for face to face for a half hour. And so finally, you know, my mind's starting to race, trying to recall what happened three or 4 months back, you know, because he did not look dead to me. So I'm thinking Salvador, he must think Jim's dead, but he's not, because, you know, I met him face to face and talked to him. So anyways, I was going into Goldfield Ghost Town, which is owned by Bob Shoes. He's a treasure hunter there for the Lost Dutchman mine. And I asked Bob, I says, Bob, do you know Jim Hatt? He says, oh yeah, Terry. He says, you'd have liked him. He says, he was some kind of an engineer and worked on all them power plants in Wyoming like you are. And I says, yeah, I met him 3 or 4 months ago. And he looks at me kind of funny. He says, you couldn't have. He's been dead for 8 to 10 years. And so now my mind is really racing, you know. So I go back to the Lost Dutchman Museum. I'm going to find this guy.
Yeah.
You know? So I go there and I'm looking around and I don't see him. And I'm trying to even remember what he really looked like. I mean, it was just happenstance that he stalked me, and I talked to him for a while. I'm just trying to really remember what all happened 3 or 4 months ago, And so I go into the desk there at the museum, and I ask the guy, I says, "Hey, is Jim Hatt around?" He says, There's nobody here that I know of by that name, Jim Hatt. I said, "Yeah, I met him here 3 or 4 months ago. He's got a name tag on, gives tours or does something here." He says, "Well, let me go ask in the back." He says, "I've been here 3 or 4 years, and I've never heard of that name, but every now and again we have volunteers that come in, and maybe he comes in every now and again, and I just never met him, So he goes back to the back and asks somebody back there, and he comes back. He says, "Oh, yeah, Jim Hatt. He's one of the guys that helped start up this museum, but he's been dead for 8 to 10 years." And I thought, wow, I wished I would have recorded that to see what happened, because he was not dead. I mean, he looked live to me. There was other people around. I was talking to him. I don't know if other people could see him or if they was ignoring me because I'm talking to myself. I don't know, but that blew my mind and opened up my realm to the paranormal, because that's the first experience and only experience that I've ever had like that. So
that's pretty crazy, Terry. That's pretty crazy. Wow. You talked to a dead guy.
And I didn't even know it for 3 or 4 months later. Yeah. And it makes me wonder, because he did not look dead. I was expecting, see ghosts leave.
Nothing was falling off of him or anything like that? There was no...
No, I mean, he looked normal to me. And it made me think, wow, how many other times has that happened? And I didn't know it, Wow. And I would have never known. I would have never known if Salvador hadn't have said, "Stop, look, there's the charcoal ovens,"
Yeah.
And that's when it clicked. I would have never known if we hadn't have gone out there and Salvador hadn't have said that. I'd have never known,
And,
if I hadn't questioned Salvador.
He gave you that piece of information that later was, where'd that information come from? The other side or something?
Since then, I was kind of a skeptic of the paranormal, because I'd never had anything happen really, but I'm no longer a skeptic. Something happens. I don't understand what. And for weeks I was racking my brain just trying to remember what happened, because it was 3 or 4 months ago, So
you're a believer now.
I'm a believer in something, because but he did not look dead to me. And on the paranormal and treasure hunting deal, I just had a guy contact me. He's building some kind of an app for some psychics, some paranormal intuitives that we're going to be testing and putting together test questions and treasure hunting questions. It'll be a closed group, and see if we can see how maybe this can relate or get some kind of insight on some of these big treasures. I would have never been open to something like this if this experience hadn't happened to me. And who knows what'll happen and where it'll fall, but it's going to be interesting anyway, because we're going to get a group of them together, and they won't know the test questions. They won't know the site, but we'll see what kind of answers we get, and they know how to do all that. I'm just helping them out with it. It should be an interesting deal. So we'll see what happens.
As we continue to explore and talk about treasure hunting and legends, I think we're going to find a lot of paranormal overlaps going on, and other things that a lot of our listeners are interested in. But before we get into more of that, Terry, I just wanted you to give everyone a little bit of information about yourself and your background and how you got into treasure hunting in the first place.
So I'm an electrician by trade, an industrial electrician, work mainly on power plants, mines, processing plants, refineries, things like that. And the company I work for right now, we're traveling all over the country. But when I first got into the field back in the early 80s, I went to work they was building a power plant out in the state where I live, out near Vernal, Utah. And I had no clue about the treasure hunting world, but I learned of a story of the Lost Roads mine of where the Indians gave to the Mormon church a bunch of gold, and they would only let one guy go get it. And from that, all kinds of legends, rumors, maps materialized on where he was getting this gold, and that there was more than one gold mine, and then people would start coming forward with all the different things that they'd found, and then that intrigued me, and I was instantly hooked because it was talking about an area where I used to go hunting in, where I knew some of these areas, and I found out about a book, read it, and they was talking about some of the areas I knew about, and I'd seen some of the things, and so it was just fascinating to me. I love the outdoors, I love the adventure, and it was just another excuse for me to get into the outdoors, and it was something that was really intriguing. So that's how I got started, and the rest is history. So since '81, I've just been tracking down treasure legends, stories, interviewing anybody I could, the old timers before they pass away, trying to get information that they're willing to pass on, and it's just been a great adventure. And if nothing else, I've met a lot of great people and heard a lot of great stories that most people will never get to hear, seen things that most people will never get to see, and really that's the treasure, that's the real treasure.
Yeah, I really like how you guys have this sense of community and that journey itself. Even if you don't find the treasure, I think a lot of us can relate to that in our different fields of research, and the people along the way that you get to meet and share with. That's the real rewarding part of it. So, what are some of the different kinds of treasure and treasure legends? You have things like Spanish treasure, lost mines.
I'm out here in Utah. That's the main bulk of it is the Spanish treasures. The lost mines is the same by the Spaniards. Along with that, there's speculation and some proof that these mines were mined before the Spaniards by the ancients. That there was intercontinental travel before Columbus. There's even theorized and some artifacts that found that the Romans were over here mining some of this stuff. Some people think that King Solomon, this is the area where he got his gold at, and so there's just all kinds of things. One of the I'm working on several projects, but one project I'm working on is the Lost Josephine mine, where the Spaniards was in there mining it. The Indians. They enslaved the Indians and worked them to death. And for some funny reason, the Indians didn't like working to death, being enslaved. And so they revolted against the Spaniards and wiped them out, drove them out. And they had to leave all their processed gold, their gold bars behind because they was fleeing for their lives. And most of them never made it back. Most of them died. And then the Indians, whatever it took, they hid that up. If it took the tribe the whole year, covering it up by basket by basket, bushel by bushel of dirt, whatever it took, hiding these mines, burying the gold bars, they did it because it was nothing but bad medicine for them. And so that's what we're out looking for. Some of the old timers, the old Indians told some of the the stories passed down of them guarding it, or their family guarding it, and where some of these things are. And so that's some of the stuff we're looking for. But the Josephine mine, that's one of the stories where we have a document where they said that there was 42 of them, and they all and most of them all died, but eight of them escaped with their lives, and they left a document of what they left behind. And in the mine, behind a wooden door, they left 200 and some odd cargoes of gold and 700 and some odd cargoes of silver. A cargo is roughly 100 to 300 pounds. So just in gold bars alone, we've got over $1 billion just in gold bars. Well, that's a great story, and there's really no proof that this is the right location where I'm looking. But I ran across an older gentleman that in the early 70s, him and his two brothers went down this cavern, and they was following the air movement of air that was going, and they was down in this cavern all day long, and they got lost. They couldn't find their way out, and their lights are growing dim. So they turned off all the lights but one. So they're using one flashlight to save the other two, and trying to find their way out. They came across this door that was they said that the craftsmanship on it was something like you see in the TV shows on the old castles and dungeons and that. You know, it was 8 foot tall, 7 foot wide. It was perfect. It was arched. It was perfectly sealed into the rock work. It was something like they'd never seen before, but they didn't have time to explore it. They was trying to find their way out. Finally, out of last ditch effort trying to get out, the one guy he knelt down and said a prayer, help us get out of here, and I'll never come back again. And he got off his knees, turned his light back on, and it just happened to hit an arrow that was carved on the wall, and it pointed the way out. And they got out, and they never ever went back. And so I found out about that, and so now we're down there trying. And Tom, the guy who told me the story, he won't go back down because his promise that he made to God. But his brother Tim never made that promise. And I just spoke with Tim, and as soon as we can get back up there when the snow's melted, he's going to go down with us and help us try and locate this door. So what's behind this door is these gold bars, and that behind this door, the silver bars, or there's something else, or is this more anciently? I don't know, because there was also a Roman coin found down in this cavern. Well, what's a Roman coin doing down in the middle of a cavern like this? And so that goes back to, where there's speculation, where the Aztec bought treasure up here, where the Romans were up here, where there's all kinds of speculation. But until we find, proof verification 100% that we can document, have the archaeologists on, it's just some great stories. But I'm trying to find out what the great stories are.
That's one of those big cache stories, it sounds like, and those are the ones that seem to really grip people's imaginations, like the Lost Dutchman mine, like the Lost Roads that you talk about, these ideas that there are these certain caches that just have tremendous wealth, and they would be, I guess, really guarded by other treasure hunters, not wanting to share their secrets, and maybe even some kind of supernatural guardians too.
So there have been caches found, but unless you know the people personally, unless they trust you, you'll never ever hear a thing about it. They just want to fly under the radar and not want a soul to know what's going on, and that's, I can understand why, because the government will come after them, take the treasures, they'll get in trouble. But the sad thing is we lose a part of history because of that. We lose history because of that. So.
Can I ask you a question, Terry?
Yeah.
What's the government's interest in taking those treasures?
The government, I can't speak for the government because
sure.
Right. I don't really know. I don't know if I can say this on here or I think most of the government is corrupt. I think the people that go in that are honest in that, I think that they get blackmailed and blackballed, and if they don't play along with the corruption, and it's like, I don't know if you know about the White Sands missile base, the treasure that was there on Victoria Peak, Doc Noss, and Ova Noss. They found all kinds of treasures. They found thousands and thousands of gold bars, and Doc brought 100 of the gold bars out. And even sold some to the Denver Mint, and pretty soon, whether the government knew about it or it just happened, they put White Sands Missile Range there in New Mexico and kicked them off. Doc Noss got they say it was self-defense, but he got murdered. His wife Ova was trying to fight in the government to try and get in, but meanwhile, documents came out that Johnson came in and got all that gold out of there, flew it out in B-52 bombers to his own personal private place in Mexico, where he had an airstrip built to land these, and he got it. So it didn't go to help the people, So what does the government do with it? I think the government could do a lot of good with it, but I don't think they do. I think it lines some corrupt politicians, pockets. And the main thing, there's the antiquities law. Anything older than 50 years old, if it's on government property, it belongs to the government. And I can see some value into that, where they don't want to lose history. If there's Indian village found, or something where they need to document and that. But the problem is they go in and document it, and they keep it a secret and hidden from you and I, and we never get to learn about it anyway. Like the giants, like things like that. It gets hushed up, and we never get to hear about it anyway. And so so either way, whether the government gets it and has control of it, or whether a private person gets it and has control of it, we still never get to hear about it, So
Yeah.
it's a messed up system we got.
It sounds like we're getting into where treasure hunting crosses over into a lot of conspiracy theory. And I guess a lot of treasure hunters often find themselves at odds with the government because a lot of these places that they're looking for are on government lands, either the BLM or the Forest Service and things like that. And like you said, they have the antiquities and mining laws, stricter regulations in different states, of course. But I think there's a general idea I've seen also among a lot of people that you interview on your channel that the powers that be really don't want us to have gold because they want to keep it to themselves. It seems like that there's a lot of that, and then also these ideas of these hidden histories and secret societies are all over this lore too.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting that a lot of this. What would you say? Treasure hunting and the talk about secret societies, the secret things, come into play. The Knights of the Golden Circle, the KGC, the Masons, the Knights Templars. Is all kind of a secret society that hid treasures and hid things and their mysteries and I don't know all there is to know about that stuff, but it's what I hear people talking about is pretty interesting. But that's what this guy told me. They want us to have the paper money and save the gold for the elite.
So if they find gold in these like places, these artifacts and stuff, they'll just take it.
Yep, 100%. They'll take it. So what we're dealing with here at the Lost Josephine mine, the mine owner, and I had to make a deal with him, before I could go in there and do anything with this. So we had to make an agreement, had some papers signed between us and him. And but he's a smart guy. He was a political science major, and he also went to law school, and so he knows how to play their games. And so he's got it figured out. We'll see how it works out, but he's got it figured out with the mining laws and the Spanish American Revolution and how the documents, everything was signed over and how it was abandoned property, that we should be able to keep this. If we find this, we'll see.
All right.
I know talking with Mel Fisher's daughter. I don't know if you now know who he is. He found the Atosha, that sunken Spanish galleon off the coast of Florida, where they found babes in gold and silver and jewels and stuff like that. And his daughter, I talked with her, Taffy, because the Fishers was out here in Utah looking for Spanish treasure. Anyways, talking with her, the government fought them tooth and nail, man. They took them back to court on appeals, man, like 70 some odd times. And every time the Fishers won, and finally they had to pay all the court costs and everything. So they negotiated a deal to have all the salvage rights for the 1715 fleet that all got wiped out in a hurricane there. But what Taffy told me they do is when they find a treasure, they don't go to the government or the police or anything. They go to the sheriff, and they have the sheriff arrest the treasure. So the sheriff arrests it and then locks it up, and then till it's settled in court. So
okay, that's the trick.
That's a trick. Never heard of having your treasure arrested before, but that's what the Fishers did.
Yeah, it sounds like that might be the best thing to do. A lot of this stuff, starts with just a legend, but then one thing I really respect about this community is there is a lot of research into primary sources, whether that's archives and maps and old newspaper articles and things like that. Can you kind of take us through this process of how one would go about searching for a particular treasure, starting just with a legend?
So, man, it's so much easier nowadays because of the internet. You know, back before the internet, I remember having to do interlibrary loans, going to the local university and looking up microfiche for the old newspaper articles and things like that. But you're exactly right. You gotta find where the source came from and keep tracking it back to the farthest source that you can find, and then make some determinations if it just even makes sense or if it's just sensationalized, reporting. Because there are a lot of lies out there. There are a lot of liars out there, and so sometimes it's hard to decide what's real and what's not. And so you do have to do your due diligence. It's 95% research and 5% boots on the ground. But you want to make sure that you're not chasing one of those lies, one of them stories that isn't true. And sometimes that gets hard to do, and so you just got to look for the best ones, and you have a multiple stories that you're chasing down, and then if you happen to have an eyewitness account like I had, I had the document of the lost Josephine mine with the way bill with the treasure behind the wooden door, and then I got an eyewitness to a guy who in the 70s found a door. So you just got to kind of marry different sources together, and sometimes you hear the story. Like I knew the story of the lost Josephine mine, but it was 20 years later before I found this guy who's seen the door, and he didn't really know the story of the gold and silver bars that was behind it. He just seen the doors. So.
Now I can't say that. Now that might be libelous. I wouldn't want any kind of those problems. But we're here to tell you.
I don't really.
The truth. Only the truth. So help us God. How you doing there, Orvis?
Well, Shelby, I'm pretty damn highfalutin mad, I can tell you that.
Well, by God, why are you mad? Now we're back and we're going to get to it now and talk about continue our expose of the secrets of conspiranormalism and where it goes from there. So we're going to continue our discussion of conspiranormalism and where it continues. And so after you're a conspiranormalist, a member of the International Association of Conspiranormal, and you get the secret communications every week on the Patreon feed, then you are asked to join the Mystic Crew. Now, why don't you tell them a little something about that, Horace?
Well, the Mystic Crew Ball is this, that's what they call it, where they get these speakers or whatever to come on, and they talk about just, I don't know, the weirdest shit I ever heard, man. I like psi research and it's like 70s disco. I don't even know. And
I never liked that disco.
I never did either. I used to burn my disco record. My sister had some disco records. I used to burn them. I took them out to the stadium and blew them up. But, you got to really watch out with this stuff. I mean, they're spreading some lying, Satanist, Canaanite propaganda. That's what's going on. I'm telling you, right now.
So, when they ask you to join, how does that go now? They ask, once you're in the International Association of Conspiranormalists, and they ask you to join this other club, and it's the Mystic Crew Ball.
Right. So there you are. You're part of that club, right? And you getting them perks. And you get your little membership pin, like the communists would give you. And you're listening to the Patreon episodes, and your brother, not your real brother, but your brother in the group, in the secret society, he asks you if you're going to their strange reality streaming event, formerly known as Mystic Crew Ball. See, they're constantly changing it on you. They're changing.
That's how they get you.
That's it. It's a bait and switch, but it's like a code. You got to understand these people. You got to understand where they come from. Well, now you start to wonder why you wasn't invited to that party, and then you see your brother there. Again, that's your group brother, not your real brother, okay? I'm making a description. It might be your real brother if he's part of it, but whatever. There is another special pen, and he tells you that while anyone can go, members of the Mystic Crew get in for free, and they can go back and watch these presentations anytime. And now, I mean, you start feeling a little left out. You know, I mean, it's human nature, right? You start feeling left out.
Now, let me interrupt you. Now, so is this like another level to the International Order of Conspiranormalists, or is this a separate thing altogether, this Mystic Crew?
Well, you see, what they say is that the same thing, but you got to be a Conspiranormalist in good standing to join the Mystic Crew. That's how it works. Okay, that's how it works. All right, so you see what I'm talking about?
And I understand this Mystic Crew has run into some controversy for being involved in all sorts of debauchery using their anonymity and cover of a simple Mardi Gras society. But their carnival is a carnival of life and death, I tell you.
Well, you know, that sounds real familiar, Shelby. I don't know where I've heard that phrase before, carnival of life and death. Well, you know, we're working here, y'all. We're working here to expose the Adam Sane and that Surf File.
So on the first,
I don't even know what his name is.
On the first one, now you learned about the International Association of Conspiranormalists.
That's right.
And now we're telling you about the Mystic Crew.
That's right.
And on the next episode, we are going to dive deep into the core of this, the core controlling, elect, secret, hidden group.
Well, Shelby Hoffman Jr., what I wanted to say real quick is that Mystic Crew Ball, otherwise known as them Strange Reality streaming events, those take place every third Friday of the month at usually about 8 o'clock p.m. and people could join in and talk to these people. I want to do it myself, but you know, like that's the way they do it. They have their little mystic meetings. So
and I understand tickets are available as well on the Eventbrite Strange Realities page. They've got the new event on there.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's all hidden in plain sight right there. You know, they talk about it, and that's how they get you. Is they get you to pay $10, and you think, well, you know, I mean, you might want to just not be part of the Patreon, but or whatever it is. I don't know.
But you might as well.
But yeah, then you might as well and stuff. So that's how they get you, and you gotta
guilt by association.
Yeah, you gotta watch out with this. These people are really serious neuro-linguistic programmers. So next time, I guess we're gonna Ancient Circle of Strange Realities. I guess what we're gonna hit next.
Expose.
And we're gonna do an expose. And we're gonna keep interrupting this satanic show that is warping the minds of a lot of people out there. And you know, you can't trust these.
And again, you can find all that mess on Patreon.com/Conspiranormal.
That's right, you can, but I want to look for it.
And then I guess one of the big things that people have in their imagination is this idea of treasure maps. And also when you're out, you know, looking in the area, these treasure signs. So can you tell people about some of these maybe famous maps or methods of making maps? Because they're not always just a flat paper map. Sometimes they're like in objects or bricks or different kind of artifacts and things like that too.
So the maps, if they're out there, there's only a few reasons they're out, unless you happen to find one in some old, you know, family heirloom Bible or dusty, you know, museum or something. Unless you happen to come across one, you know, the ones that are in books, there's several reasons they're out there. One, that the guy who wrote the book has exhausted his chance on looking for them. Two, they've doctored them up so that they aren't exactly the same maps they got. Or three, they frauded them themselves, you know. And so maps, you know, there's really not a lot of that. You used to be, you know, markings on trees, the old pine trees, you know, but a lot of them, the pine beetles and the fire is destroyed. If you have a story of something in the area, you know, you need to just kind of search, boots on the ground, and just kind of look for for things that don't look natural, a pile of rocks that don't look natural, that had to be put there man-made, a depression in the ground. You look for things that just don't look natural. And the Spaniards, they would make rock monuments. They would carved on trees, but like I said, the tree markings are pretty much all gone now. The maps, there might be some family maps of where their great grandfather found something and left a map, and so something like that, you want to track down. There's one that happened here in Utah again, where there was these three trappers. There was a group of them up the Great Salt Lake, and they split up from the Great Salt Lake and looking for beavers, and the three guys came down the Jordan River and headed into the Utah Lake, and then they skirted to the east side, and they was checking all the streams looking for beavers to trap, and then they got towards the other end of the valley where it kind of closed off. They seen an Indian encampment up where they was following a stream up, and so they skirted around the Indian encampment and ran into a hunting party, and the hunting party started chasing them and shooting them with arrows, and so they was hightailing it for the mountains, and one of them got shot in the back, and they was losing ground, and so they seen a small hole, so they investigated, see if they'd crawl into it. They crawled into it, shoot their horses off, and they crawled into it. And after they'd been there for a day or so, they noticed, it opened up into a big cavern, and they noticed there's some wood in there. They lit it on fire and went and followed it back to back and found a stack of gold bars. And they came back to tell the one partner they got shot, and he died. So they took him back, made kind of a little casket out of the gold bars, and put the gold bars over the top of him so the animals didn't get him. And then they hiked out of there. Well, they didn't have a pen or pencil or anything, so they just kind of committed to memory of how to get to these gold bars. And when they got back to the trapping party, they didn't tell any of them, but they when they finished with their trapping and got back to their where they was from, the one guy left a map and a journal that his grandson found in his footlocker, and so he came out here looking for it, and that's how we know about this story in kind of the area. But still, he remarried, and was a successful business owner, and didn't need to come back out here looking for this gold. But his grandson, back in the 50s, found it. No, it was back in the 20s. Found it, came out here and was looking, and we have a few families that he tied in with, that's how we've got the story. And there's several stories like that happened, that the family members came back trying to find the family's fortune, or what the family had found, or what their relatives had found, and so that's how we have them stories. They finally came to the light of day, but it's going to be a story like that, that most people don't know about. That's going to be an interesting to try and follow up and see if it makes sense. First, you gotta see if it makes sense at all.
Yeah.
So.
Well, in addition to some of these methods that we're talking about, doing your historical research, getting your witnesses and documents and things like that, there's other methods that do kind of cross over and would be considered paranormal by some people. A lot of it seems to be some intuition and hunches, whether that's some kind of a psychic phenomena perhaps, or even like your experience. It sounds like you might have gotten some clues from the other side of the grave, but you also have things like dowsing, which is considered supernatural to some people, and there's other methods that seem to be paranormal in the actual search for treasure.
So yeah, there's several things, like treasure that has been buried for a long time. You have your acid range, your folic acid, your nitric acid, all your different when it rains down on the ground. It hits these noble metals, and it doesn't really destroy them, but it creates a gas when it hits them. And if the atmospheric condition is just right, it doesn't always happen. It very seldom happens. But if it's just right, you know, if the atmospheric condition is just right, it'll percolate up and create a gas, and you can see it, kind of like the aurora borealis, you know.
Oh, wow.
And that's called a treasure flare. And I had a guy from Mexico come up. I used to sell and rent metal detectors back in the 70s and 80s. And I had a guy from Mexico come to my house. He wanted to know if I had a metal detector that would go 3 or 4 feet deep. And I can't remember if it was 3 feet or 4 feet. Anyways, he'd found a Spanish treasure of silver coins exactly that way. The townspeople every now and again would see in this certain area, see these colored flames coming out of the ground, and it spooked most of the town folks, thinking it was ghosts or something like that. Well, he was curious, so he dug up, and it was a clay pot full of these silver coins. And so he'd heard stories of other sightings like this, so he wanted to know if there was a metal detector that go that deep, and I guess it must have been 3 or 4 feet, and I don't remember exactly what it was. So we dug a hole in my backyard, and he brought some of them coins that he found, a big jar of them, and we buried whatever it was, 3 or 4 feet deep. I can't remember. And what took the 2 box over the top of it, and it found him, you know. And so that story, you know, things like that, is the Spaniards used to do that. They'd sit up on peaks and at night and during full moons and that, look for these, see if they could see these flares coming out of the ground, and then they'd triangulate them, you know. So that's one way. Another way you're talking about is dowsing. You know, I had a guy come to my house. I found what I call the mystery glyphs. They're a strange set of hieroglyphs neatly carved on a cliff wall, clear up in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's extremely difficult to even get to them. And I thought it was Spanish treasure symbols, and I thought other things, but trying to research what they are, I learned there was more of these scattered throughout the western United States. Some people think it has to do with Knights Treasure or Knights Templar or the Knights of the Golden Circle or Montezuma's treasure or other things. But I had this guy come to my house, and he wanted to know where these was, and they're in the mountains east of Provo, and that's all I would tell him. I would, you know, and he kept on saying, well, them symbols are in Provo Canyon. I'd say, no, they're in the mountains east of Provo. And and he kept on getting me to say Provo Canyon. I thought, well, I'm not going to tell him where they are, so I'll just let him keep on thinking Provo Canyon. And so when he left my house, he thought these things were in Provo Canyon, which is a long ways from it's a huge area from the mountains east of Provo to Provo Canyon, and even the mountains east of Provo is a big area. Anyways, when he left my house, he was thinking they was Provo Canyon. He comes back to my house the next day with a map, and he'd map dowsed where these symbols were, and he'd ripped it off a full map, and he says, you know, when you told me them symbols were in Provo Canyon, I said, I never told you in Provo Canyon. I said, the mountains east of Provo. He says, well, that's what I want to ask you. They're here, aren't they? And he handed me this map, and I couldn't tell where it was at because it was ripped off of a full-size map. And so he goes out to the car and gets the full-size map, and he puts it on, and he was right dead on. I mean, we're talking a 10, 15-mile difference from Provo Canyon to where these things were, and he was right dead on, and that amazed me. And so I wanted to see how he did this. And so what he did was he had a little vial with a gold nugget in it, and he drilled a hole in the lid, and he put a string in it, and then he attached that string to a pencil, and he put that pencil to his head and hold it over the map, and he would kind of ask, you know, is there gold here? You know, is there, you know, how is it gold bars? Is it a vein of gold? Is it, you know, and he'd say, if it's gold bars, how many is there? More than 100? Is there less than 50? You know, and he just asked like he's talking to somebody. And then he asked, can I have it? And it was said like there was 100 gold bars there. I'm just making this part up because I don't really remember. This was a long time ago. I don't remember the exact numbers, but he says, can I have some? And it told him no. And he says, man, there's 100 gold bars here and I can't have any. What's wrong with you or something? He's like he's talking to somebody, and I ain't kidding you. It looked like somebody grabbed a hold of the bottle with the gold vial bottle and grabbed a hold of the string and pulled it out. I mean, it went from the pencil out to a triangle and then back to the bottle, and then it jumped. It flipped. It's like they pulled it out and let the string go, and it jumped. And I thought, wow, because I'm watching his hands close. I'm trying to see how he's doing this, making this bottle move and all this. I'm thinking he's doing it with his own, reflexes and stuff. And when it did that, there's no way he could have done that. And then as soon as he did that, he put it up and he says, I shouldn't have done that. I was being sarcastic and making fun of it, and I shouldn't have done that. And he put it up, and that was that for that day. But he was right dead on. He was right dead on where them mystery glyphs were. But I watched him dig several holes and never find not one thing. Not one thing. But with that said, I think treasure that's been buried for a while, I think that the signal for dowsing, I think there's something to dowsing. I don't know what. I can't do it. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm kind of a skeptic, but I think there's something to it. But I think it follows kind of a magnetism, and I think, or where magnetism kind of attacks this precious metals or metals in the ground, and I think because of the pull of the moon or something like that, I think it can be pulled off. And if you're off 2 feet, you just will be a mile off because you don't know it. Mm-hmm. I think there's something to it. I think these people are close, but they're off. They're off a little bit, and if you don't know which way or how far, it just will not even be there because you have no idea. So that's when you got to take that kind of stuff and verify it with metal detectors, with ground penetrating radar, with other sophisticated type of tools. Yeah, that's what this guy did. He was doing it on a map.
Yeah.
And people say that works, and he was right dead on. There's no way he should have been able to just guess where them mystery glyphs were, and he was right dead on. So that amazed me.
I'm curious, Terry, about the concept of like treasure spirits or like guardians of the treasure and the idea of curses on treasures and those type of things.
That's what people say, that there's spirits left to guard these things, and some of them are cursed, and maybe that's true. Before that was said, before I had my ghost experience, I thought, yeah, right. But now, I don't know. I don't know. I've had my hair standing up in the back of my head, but I just played it off as me. I'm just a scaredy cat or spooked or thinking things, and when you're out in the mountains at night and by yourself, you hear strange noises, or your mind starts playing tricks on you, and you start thinking things, and I just figure that's what was going on, but who knows.
It seems also like looking for treasure gets people out to some of these areas where there might be Bigfoot.
Yeah, I have never ever seen a Bigfoot. I think I smelled one twice, and I've been in the mountains a lot.
Heard that's not a good smell,
I used
too.
To think it was a terrible smell, and I'm always out in the mountains, and I've never smelled anything like that before. But I never seen anything, never heard anything, and I thought the Bigfoot thing was a farce, I thought, surely somebody'd find a dead one, or somebody would shoot one, or we should have pictures nowadays, because we got cameras. Back then, back in the old days, you didn't have cameras, and you didn't have time to pull them out. You didn't have it, even with the phones, sometimes it gets tough. But I thought there should be more proof than what there was. But I had a friend who was honest. He would not lie to me. He told me when he was a Boy Scout, he sat and watched one for a half hour, and it scared him so bad. And I don't know why it scared him. It didn't do anything to him, but it scared him so bad that he wouldn't sleep out in the mountains anymore. He just would not do it. And I know he would not lie. And I asked him, you sure it wasn't a bear you seen? And he says, no, man, it had like a human face, and it was just the hands. And anyways, so I got thinking, well, I know he wouldn't lie, so I don't know what the deal is there. But then I used to do a lot of coyote hunting. I had an old boy tell me, that the only reason you can even call a coyote in or get one is because they don't have any logic. It's all instinct. They're all just trying to survive and eat. And if they had logic, the way that their keen sense of smell is, their keen sense of sight and hearing, you would never ever see one. Mm-hmm. And he says, you take a hound dog, a lion hunter who has a hound dog, they run them up and down a dirt road, and that hound dog knows when it picks up a lion scent, from the distance of that dirt road, 7 feet wide, it knows from one side of the road to the other side which is the freshest scent. In a 7-foot area, it knows which way to go. And I thought, wow, yeah, that's pretty amazing. And I got thinking, wow, if Bigfoot had a keen sense of smell like that, keen sense of sight, keen sense of hearing, and logic, I guess you probably wouldn't hardly ever see something unless it was an accident, So
we'd see you coming first.
Yeah. Hear you, see you, smell you,
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I want to get to some of these famous, real big treasure legends. You mentioned the Lost Josephine, which it sounds like you guys got some good clues and got a line on, and the Lost Roads mine. Can you go into a little more detail on the Lost Roads mine? That was the first one that really got you started down this path, but it has to do with early Utah and Mormon history.
Yeah. So Chief Walker, Walkera, he found this big treasure, and was kind of guarding over it and whatnot, and he had a vision or a dream that some white men with top hats would come into the valley, and he was supposed to give them to him. Well, he first came in was Jim Bridger. And Jim Bridger, so he tried giving it to Jim Bridger and giving him some, and Jim Bridger just thought he was a crazy old Indian. And then the Mormons came in, Brigham Young, and so he talked to Brigham Young about it, and they set apart a guy, Thomas and Caleb Rhodes, and to go in and get this for the Mormon Church. And he would, that's the only people that the Indians would let into this area was the Rhodes, and he would bring out the gold for him. Well, along the way, there was a Spanish pack train headed out from the mountains and got massacred by the Indians, and they sent Thomas Rhodes to go investigate it. And he found a map on one of these Spaniards' bodies, and it showed 7 other locations. And so he had an oath that he wouldn't go and just take gold out of that sacred mine, only when the Indians would let him, and only for Brigham Young. But he didn't have an oath on these other mines, so he went and found them. And back in the 1800s, the marked trees, the Spanish trails, they're a lot clearer right now. So he was able to follow them, find the markings on the trees, see the stuffs, and they're able to open some of these up and get some gold out for himself. But he never would really tell anybody where it was. He left a map when he finally died. He left a map to his wife, and people have been trying to find that, and people have ended up dead, because of it. And some people have said they have found some, and there's all kinds of stories.
But it's thought that a lot of the early wealth that helped the growth of the LDS church was attributed to the riches from this mine. Some of these people say that's what people are saying. Yep, that's exactly what people are saying. And so, and one of the things is I don't know
if you know the show Blind Frog Ranch, on the Discovery Channel. It kind of goes a little. It goes into this a little bit, but that is an area where not people knew. But in 2008, a friend of mine who just passed away just last Thursday. He was a wealth of knowledge. He was my treasure hunting partner, a friend of mine, helped me form the Ancient Historical Research Foundation. When he was a young guy, the older Indians befriended him and told him a lot of things, and he never would divulge or reveal, what exactly they told. Sometimes he'd tell me some things, but it was their belief and his belief that it's for the last days to save the country and things like that. But he did take me and show me where he thought where the older Indians told him that this mine was they call it the Karashinab, and it's guarded by Towats. Towats is a rock structure that they said was kind of a figure of their god, and he took me and showed me that in 2008, and we figured out and found a depression in the ground, and I even bounced, and it kind of on that depression, it kind of bounced up and down just a little bit, like it had been logs piled on it and dirt, and so we thought we was close to the area of where this was. Well, we go back in 2009, and there's no trespassing signs, and somebody's gone in and dug up the whole hillside and dug a big hole, but they're not digging where we found what we was looking for, and the information that he got from the old Indians. And so we was going to call the guy from Texas. We called him and talked to him. Was going to try and make a deal with him. But then my friend June, he went in and had a neck operation. They was going to fuse the vertebrae in his neck, and they screwed up and it paralyzed him. And so we never ever did go back on that one. But I don't know why I even telling that story, but that's part of the sacred mine of the Karashinab is kind of in that area. The Blind Frog Ranch, the show on the Discovery Channel. There's a lot of faults and misinformation on it on this show and whatnot. But the basics that there according to my friend June, there was something there, and more than just June. There was some things going on there in that area. So,
with the exception of the Lost Dutchman mine and all the Dutch hunters, would you say the Lost Roads mine has the biggest kind of community that are all working and sometimes working together to find it in the States?
Yeah, there's several of them. The Lost Dutchman mine, the Lost Roads mine, there was a big deal with the Cabile Mountains and in New Mexico and Doc Noss's Victoria Peak. That's a big area that a lot of people are searching for. There's several of them. There's the 1715 fleet that's sunk in the hurricane off of Florida. There's a big group that's doing that. I mean, there's several big treasures out and about. So.
And then I guess we're coming to one that is closer to us here, the mythology and legends around this idea that there was this secret society called the Knights of the Golden Circle, which after the Civil War were kind of a Confederate underground that hid caches of weapons and gold across the South and American West. And me and Adam actually did a little bit of research. I've been looking into some of the speculations around the James gang and their involvement in all this, because Jesse James and his brother and associates lived in Nashville for a few years. But can you introduce people to this idea of this lost rebel gold of the KGC?
So the Knights of the Golden Circle, they the saying that the South will rise again, that's exactly what that was formed for. Jesse James was part of it. There was a whole group of them that they would rob trains, banks, whatever, bury this, like you said, gold and ammunition or rifles and that all across all across the United States, and particularly in the western United States also, that I'm aware of, but all across the United States. And it was specifically so that the South could rise again. There was going to be another civil war. They was preparing for it. And then the Spanish-American War happened, and that kind of united the country and foiled all that plans. And so, that never really happened, but all that treasure is still out there buried and hidden, and there's clues and codes to it. And I don't know all the clues and codes to that. I know people that do, but yeah, that's, the rebel gold, it's hidden all over there. There's several supposed to be here in Utah, and that's a long ways away from where you guys are at, but like I said, that was buried all over the country, just so that they'd have these stashes and places where they could get to a stash wherever they was at, if they needed money, if they needed weapons, ammunition, whatever. So
there's been a real popular book, I guess it's been out for a while now, called Shadow of the Sentinel originally. Now the recent publication was called Rebel Gold. That's really popularized that, and then there's been some TV shows and stuff. But before that, a lot of this stuff centered around this book that was out of print called Jesse James was one of his names. And I've actually got a copy of the book. Yeah, the Black Book. I got a copy of it that your friend Daniel Lowe re-released. And looking into that, there's quite the tall tales in that, but there's probably some kernels of useful information in there. And I guess all the treasure hunters interested in that stuff really just try to parse out everything in that book and even think that the entire thing is some kind of elaborate code.
Yeah, so Shadow of the Sentinel, that was by Hillbilly Bob Brewer. His family was one of these guardians, sentinels over one of these spots. And so he learned through going through the family files and whatnot, some of these codes and stuff. Interesting enough, I talk about the mystery glyphs that I found, and that they're scattered throughout the western United States. There's 38 of them now that I'm aware of that's scattered throughout the western United States. Well, back in the early 90s, when I don't know how long the internet had been going. I just learned about it and got a thing called web TV, and I learned how to do. I didn't have a computer, and I got on the internet and thought, wow, man, it was crazy. That's the closest thing to infinity there was, because it was just the information was growing by leaps and bounds every day.
Mm-hmm.
And now anything you want, you can research and find anything you want. But anyways, I learned how to do HTML programming, and I built myself a website. And back in the day, it was a great website. Today's standards, it would be nothing. It was called the Treasure Hunter's Hideout, and I had some stories and some things in there that people just didn't know about and hadn't heard about, and pictures of the mystery glyphs and some stories. And anyway, that Hillbilly Bob Brewer, he contacted me and he told me if I knew what was good for me, I would take them pictures of the mystery glyphs down, because it was tied into the KGC treasure. And he says, if I knew what was good for me, I'd take them down. Well, I never did. And other people speculate that these mystery glyphs do tie in with the Knights of the Golden Circle, the KGC treasure. And that's just as good a story as any. So who knows? I had a guy contact me from the Philippines who somehow has access to a satellite with some special software and filters on it, and so I had him track down one of these mystery glyph sites for me and scan it with the satellite. And he says there's like 12 or 13 different treasures stashed there, and so I'm going to go up there. I went up there once. It's extremely difficult to get to. And I went up there once and had my GPS to go where the satellite guy said that these treasures would be. And I just had it on my phone, the GPS on my phone, because it's on the face of the mountain, the valley. It's great reception for a phone and everything. And so I got within 50 feet of the first location, and all of a sudden, man, my GPS just took off and started going random all over the place and wouldn't stop. And I couldn't couldn't get any closer than the 50 feet. It just started moving all over the place, and I couldn't get, I couldn't zero in on where the location was. And I thought, well, maybe it's something because I'm close to a cliff or something. Didn't make sense from where I was at, but so I thought, well, I'll abandon this one and I'll go to the next one, which was 100 yards away, and I get within 50 feet of it, and the exact same thing happened again. So I don't know exactly what was going on there, but that was kind of strange. So I need to go back there and track that down with a regular GPS unit, not my phone, and see what happens there. Maybe the spirits was messing with me. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff is really cool. It sounds like it's really turned your life into an adventure, and it causes you to look and interact with your environment in a different way, I think, and look into the history of the place that you live. I think anybody, if you have like a newspapers.com account or your local library, you have access to your local papers database. You can usually find a treasure legend in your immediate area, and it might lead you to some other places. I think it's a real fun way to interact with the environment and history.
Oh yeah, I can remember back in the 80s. Going through microfiche, I was looking for a certain newspaper article on microfiche, before the internet. And I can remember while I was looking for the specific artifact or this specific newspaper article, I can remember reading an article about where I live. There's a lake, and the pioneers back in the late 1800s wrote how that there was lights, 3 or 4 lights, dancing, moving up and down and all around, following each other and going around and around above the lake, and for 10, 15 minutes, and then disappeared. I thought, holy cow, man, this is talking about some kind of a UFO deal back in the late 1800s. And I wished I'd have got a copy of that, and I didn't. So you never know what you're going to find in some of these old newspaper articles. There's some great information, great things in them.
With the treasure hunting culture, it seems like more than anything, it's about these stories and it's like a oral traditions that are passed on, and you're really making it a point to try to document some of what you call the old timers and make sure that their puzzle pieces to these stories live on, so we can continue to build on them. When I was younger, I met a lot of great old timers, and I wished I'd have recorded their stories, because I could not remember their stories like they told them. And even if I tried, I couldn't do them justice because they lived them, And so I did eventually start recording them with tape recorders, And so I have a lot of them stories. I think back in the late 80s, I did start tape recording some of these stories, but there's so many stories that I never recorded that I wished I would have. That's kind of what some of my passion with my YouTube channel was, that I wanted to get some of these old timers stories and history and legends and lores written, recorded in their voice, them telling them reliving it, them, because that's just the best way. And so that's kind of what I've tried to do with a lot of my YouTube channel is interview some of these old timers, their experiences treasure hunting, what they was doing, what they found, so. Yeah, I think that's great. Do you plan on releasing the audio of any of those old tapes you have, or just putting up the audio on YouTube? Or
a few of them I have released, and I get complaints, hey, that sound is terrible. Why don't you invest in a mic? Well, I'm thinking this was never for you, this was my own personal, and I'm just sharing it with you. And this was done with a tape recorder, a cassette tape,
right.
Back in the 80s, and
well, there'd be no complaints from us. I'd encourage you to put up as much of that stuff as you can. Well, Terry, I really want to thank you for coming on. I think everyone should take a second look at this treasure hunting culture and history and legends and lore. I don't think it's just a subculture. It's really an American pastime. And it really goes back and has been real instrumental in forming a lot of who we are as a country. Like I said, all this paranormal and conspiracy stuff that a lot of our audience is interested in, it's all woven into it as well. But what's next for you, and where can everyone find you and your organizations and your YouTube channel?
So my YouTube channel is just Terry Carter Treasure Hunter. Look for the skull and crossbones pirate with the patch over the one eye. We're putting together a treasure hunter, UFO, Bigfoot kind of gathering here in Utah, in Altamont, Utah, on August 12th and 13th. Free to everybody. Just come, and we're having speakers. We did it last year, and we had a couple hundred people come, 200 or 300, and I was surprised at how many people came from out of state, and from how far away. And the one thing that I was disappointed about was we just had it from the evening. We had speakers, and so I never really got to meet everybody and talk to everybody. And I was so busy trying to video everything. And
we know the feeling on that, Terry. We understand. we put a conference on ourselves every year, so.
Yeah, this year we're having a picnic in the park, where we're meet and greet everybody and bring your own food and having a picnic, and then we'll have some open mic people talking. There's people can get up and tell their stories, whatever, and then the evenings we'll be having guest speakers, and so that's free to everybody. August 12th and 13th here in Altamont, Utah. It's called the Moon Lake Gathering or something like that. I call it the Treasure Hunters Rendezvous, but it's the Moon Lake Gathering. They're going to be talking about Bigfoot, UFO, and treasure hunting. And because it's a great site. We're right by Skinwalker Ranch, right by Blind Frog Ranch, right in the heart of all the Spanish treasure lores for Utah. And so we got that going. The Ancient Historical Research Foundation. I am just so busy, and we just not have a lot to do, time to do what we really want to do. Track down the ancients, track down the stories, and find out if they're real, if these giants are real, if there's ancient cultures here before Columbus, if there's, so that's Ancient Historical Research Foundation. I don't know if it's .com or .org or something like that, but other than that, I'll just be continuing on with my YouTube channel and doing treasure hunting on things that I'm working on. So I was just gonna say, hey, thanks for inviting me, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. It's been really great, really, really enlightening to talk to you. We're gonna close out the show in a separate section tonight, but thank you so much. This has been really great. Maybe we could try to make it out there to Utah. You never know. We might try.
Come on
at least
Come
some
on
year.
August 12th and 13th. Yeah.
All right.
Be the Utah Treasure Hunters will be there, and a lot of other people, and we're just gonna have a great time.
Stay on the line for us, and guys, we'll be back to close out the show on Conspiranormal. Welcome back to Conspiranormal, everybody. That was a very interesting show. We haven't really done these little postscript things in a long time. We usually just end the show as the guest is still on the line. But
yeah,
this was your suggestion to get him on. We've had him on before, back in like September 2020, right before the second conference happened. And
yeah, to be honest too, at that point I was not as mesmerized by the treasure hunting culture as I am now.
Right. So you asked us if we could get him on again.
Yeah.
And so, I pursued it and got him on. But, you've been looking into this stuff a lot. And, I just want some of your thoughts on what he was talking about. And I guess viewing this as like as its own kind of little subculture.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how many, like, these guys actually find treasure. it seems to be a constant pursuit that never really pans out.
But like he says, you know, the real gold and the treasures and the quest itself and the lifestyle and
probably that fellowship too. And that
absolutely. And a lot of similar things that we experience. And, you know, when I was like really revisiting the superstition lore, because like I said, that was one of the first mysteries that really intrigued me as a child. We used to go to superstitions like all the time.
Yeah. Right outside of Phoenix.
Yeah. And when I started revisiting it, you know, I found weird kind of like mystical themes. And I couldn't help but feel that there's like this overwhelming relationship to those ideas of the alchemical quest and the search for gold, but it not necessarily being real literal gold and all the interpretations of that. And then within the Lost Dutchman lore, there's very strange things. Jacob Waltz was the German immigrant who became known as Lost Dutchman, and there's all this lore around whether he had this had found a hidden mine or treasure in the Superstition Mountains. It relies on a lot of an idea of a deathbed confession that he had to a woman named Julia Thomas and some other German speakers there in Phoenix. But this woman Julia Thomas later goes on to head a strange religious cult that had a fire temple in the front yard in downtown Phoenix. And there's other weird stuff in the Superstition Mountains with Zoroastrianism.
Oh, really?
There's it seems like a lot of mystical currents in this stuff that really made me interested. And then I discovered the whole idea of KGC and Rebel Gold and the Jesse James lore that tied that all back into Nashville and then back around again to the Superstition Mountains, because in that book, Shadow of the Sentinel, it postulates that the superstition treasure lore also comes from Jesse James and his gang as well. So it kind of all went full circle, and just finding all these weird currents of this American folklore and this American pastime of treasure hunting that really, it enchants people's worlds, you know, and it's been really interesting, and I've used it kind of as an antidote to a lot of negativity in the paranormal and conspiracy worlds, even though it crosses over. These people in general kind of seem to not really be into fame or being a big personality or selling things besides maybe treasure books.
Right.
But, you know, people actually do a lot of primary source research, which is really cool. And this community and these like unbroken oral traditions and transmissions, it's really fascinating. I've really gotten into it lately.
Yeah, it's like it's a different world than what I think that what we talk about normally.
Yeah.
And people don't really think about it as being like something that's associated with the paranormal per se, but there's a lot of these legends and things that, you know, the paranormal are involved with. And then, you know, there's also, as we kind of talked about, there's also a conspiracy aspect to all this too. Like the elites don't want you to have the gold and that type of thing, and
all the hidden history stuff. Because of course, who are the ones that we really think of first as finding a lost treasure underneath the temple? You know, the Templars, and then all the ideas of Templars in America and all that kind of mythology. Relates to this treasure hunting stuff, because then if there were these secret societies or pre-Columbian contact, perhaps they were burying treasure or lost evidence of different ancient peoples in the Americas, etc. And of course, like a lot of this has to do with the birth of the LDS Church comes from treasure hunting lore. It's quite the gumbo pot, but I think it really is neglected and kind of off in its own little world that's often separate from the larger paranormal and these fringe cultures that we're a part of.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting. One thing I wanted to ask you wrote down here, but I don't think we got a chance to talk to him, was the Lost Roads mine.
Yeah, he had mentioned that some think that this wealth was part of a plan for the church to use in the last days to save the country, whatever that means.
The church means, you're meaning LDS.
The LDS, yeah.
The
Mormons.
Mormons. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. So that's in Utah, I guess.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
And then
Utah really seems to be
mine. Is that Utah as well?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Utah seems to really be the center of a lot of these treasure hunting guys. I don't know if Terry is kind of like the bullhorn of this whole community. It seems like.
Yeah.
I think that there is a large amount of, I don't know how relatively recent it is. I think after the Shadow of the Sentinel, I think there's really been an explosion in people in the South looking for KGC treasure. So that seems to be quite the thing now, and I don't have enough real connection, honestly, to enough rural Southerners to know whether that's a newer phenomena or if there is as much actual, unbroken oral traditions of that.
Yeah. And we talked I talked to, when I had Jason Andrews on, we talked about the KGC stuff that he's like looking into in like Southern Illinois, Northern Kentucky, and that whole area, and what could possibly be there. And, there's I guess that possibility that the KGC, Knights of the Golden Circle, that there was the headquarters in Nashville, I guess, at a certain point, or at least it is said.
Yes, in the Black Book
or not. Yeah.
In the Black Book, and we went searching for that location. Actually, me and you.
So the Black Book, we went looking for that, and we got. I think Sergio thinks he knows where it is, and we're pretty sure.
Yeah,
but there's a couple
city maps.
There's a couple of houses in East Nashville that, one that actually has a historical marker next to it, right?
Well, that was in White's Creek.
That's where we went. Okay, but there was the other one, the red house, that is where Jesse James
where Jesse James Jr. was born. Yeah.
And the church that he went to church is still there, I think, right?
Yeah. So. And this going down the rabbit hole of that book was really interesting to just see like all this kind of Jesse James tall tales and folklore, and how he really, from this folk hero, becomes an almost superhero.
Yeah.
And
it's pretty ridiculous.
It's pretty ridiculous, but it reminds me of Carnivals of Life and Death,
right?
By James Shelby Downard,
right? Good point. Yeah, as
it's like, it's ridiculous, but it's probably a collection of all this lore, tall tales, etc., that has some kernels of truth in it that may not be able to be found other places.
It's like an alternate history.
Right.
Of the United States and the things that have happened and what could have possibly happened. And and this KGC stuff, really, this KGC connection to the birth of the outlaw culture as we know it, this stuff goes really deep, not just Southern identity, but American identity itself. Right.
And it's been really fruitful, but I think that this is something real interesting, and I'd encourage anyone to look into your local area for these treasure stories, because you'll find other weird stuff. Found a newspaper article about this guy from Pennsylvania who was here with a psychic medium from New Orleans, and they were supposedly looking for some rebel gold in 1892, but then as I researched more and finding out who this guy was, it turns out he was actually an oil prospector. So I'm thinking maybe this was like a cover story and they were actually looking for natural resources and not rebel gold. But he had supposedly was using dowsing equipment and things like that. So then the flip side of that is that he becomes successful as an oil and gas prospector through dowsing, and was perhaps using psychic mediums as well, because he actually became successful. Yeah. So you'll find a lot of other strange phenomenon revolving around treasure hunting. So it's a fruitful, part to add to your other investigations into the paranormal mysteries or conspiracy theories.
Okay, yeah, excellent. That's a good rundown of that. Okay, well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. thank you for taking the reins of that show because I have absolutely no idea.
Well, you know more now.
I'm learning from you.
And Terry is just such a great guy. You know, he's the real deal.
Yeah, he really is. That's for sure. He's pretty genuine. So guys, just usual spiel. Strange Realities Conference coming up October 14th through the 16th in Nashville, Tennessee at SIR Nashville. Get your tickets. Online is $30, but in person is $70, and we would love to see you guys come out this year. Also, Patreon is still up, and we're starting to put more and more up on Patreon. Actually, this week we'll have a Patreon about like what is going to happen at the Strange Realities Conference this year. Just a little overview. And you can find that at patreon.com/Conspiranormal.
And the Patreon, you know, is just that. There's nothing weird going on. I know people said there's something weird going on with the show lately. I don't know what
I don't know what
these messages, these other guys that are coming on, but hopefully it's not.
Yeah, I don't know what
there.
People have been alerting to me about that, and I don't really know what they're talking about. I guess I'm gonna have to go back and listen. And see what's going on.
So give us your thoughts on that, guys. But otherwise, we will catch you next week on Conspiranormal.
If you would like to help the show, please consider becoming a Patreon at www.patreon.com/Conspiranormal or leave a one-time donation at Conspiranormal.com. And please check out our YouTube channel, Conspiranormal Podcast.